I'm a rapper, I'm not a poet. Poet, I'm not a rapper. Guess it's opposite there, cause you niggas just got it backwards. Got me sick to my stomach. Go up on my lantern. New trios, Frio, the most terrible tandem. Deliver shock value, but no, not Timberlanding. Critical observation alerting you ambulances. Clap on and clap off. Rap on and rap off. Hard times for hard rhymes, that concrete, that asphalt. If I did look twice, I guess that's her asphalt. May I assist you and score, get my pass out. Matter of fact, it's what you need. Need some rest, you just fatigue. See, technically I'm foul, and Mrs. Wallace, I'm Rashid. Know this beat is a banger, have no reason for anger. If I'm slightly deterred, you know I'm giving the finger. I'm a savage like Corey, but not in need of Topanga. Right like 90 degrees, you in the need of an angle.
Thank you to Club Monster for the intro. And to the listeners, I know. This is the Free Lunch Podcast, and we know. Welcome to the Free Lunch Podcast. This your boy Tight, and I got my boy BG with me. What's going on, BG?
What's happening? Free Lunch, we back again. What's going on with you, Tight?
And I'm doing all right. How you feeling today, sir?
I feel good, man. It's a beautiful day. The devil thought he had me. Had a few obstacles to get to this point, but we here. And we're ready to deliver another exciting Free Lunch Podcast episode.
So you said the devil, so you must be talking about Facebook.
No, not that devil. The equipment devil. We had a hard time trying to get this thing set up, man. I'm in a new location, so I had to adjust some things and move some things around. But now I'm ready.
So I got the shades on with the mirror tint, dog. They can't see my eye.
The hater blockers is back.
They back, dog. I think we might have to take a picture and let the people see the hater blockers.
Oh, you gonna let us put it on Instagram for you?
I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I know we're trying to get Clear Channel to sponsor us and get us on TV because you want to be famous. So
I want to be famous, Mama. If you're listening, Mama, I want to be famous. Ain't no doubt about that.
Hey, I might rock I think I'm gonna rock the shades every podcast moving forward.
If that's how you feel, man, make it happen.
That's how I'm feeling. But guess what time it is?
Is it that time again?
I think so. I think the people ready.
I think the people ready too. You ready?
Teach me how to love. Show me the way to surrender my heart. Girl, I'm so lost to love. How I can get my emotions involved. Teach me. Show me how to love.
Yeah. Teach me how to love.
I was watching the 5 Heartbeats this weekend, dog. And that's always inspiration to bring the vocals out.
That Eddie Kane, ain't it?
That Eddie Kane. That's Eddie Kane.
A heart is a heart. A heart is a heart. There's a place for love or something like that, huh?
You got the words all wrong.
A Negro classic.
So,
dog, was that a real group, dog?
Yeah, why not? That's probably one of the best musical Negro spirituals out there.
The 5 Heartbeats.
The 5 Heartbeats. But on the real, I think I kind of used that one to talk about today's topic. I wanted to ask you, do you think we should market this particular podcast towards the community or more towards the male?
I say we probably market it towards the men, since rarely do we get a good insight on their perspective, and be it that we are men. I think that'll be good to kind of give a different point of view, or man's point of view, a point of view that's not popular, and be able to work from there and see how the people take to that.
Okay, okay. So let's get at a shot. So I guess today's topic is going to center around how to love. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was thinking about this topic, I did my research, but I kind of want to focus. So there are three types of love, right? There's agape, which is kind of unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
Philia,
Mm-hmm.
which is reciprocal love. So the person loves you because you love someone because the person loved you. But kind of today's topic is going to be around eros, which is more around a romantic type of love. But before we even jump into the whole topic of how to love, I kind of wanted to discuss relationships centered around marriages and this whole idea of divorces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of discussing marriages and divorce rate, and really tying back in this whole topic of how to love around that conversation, because I kind of want to give marriages and the whole divorce rate a different perspective, and more so around this idea of knowing how to love. So I know you did some research prior to this particular podcast around just marriages and the divorce rate. So kind of wanted you to touch on that, and then we could kind of start the discussion of this particular podcast.
Okay. Yeah. So just in reviewing and again, prepared for this talk that we're having today, just looked at a little bit of information from different places. And, the consensus is that, that divorce rates have increased and they've been trending up since probably, a lot of the literature says around the 1970s. And it's, a lot of different, um, trains of thought on why those numbers, or divorce rates have, continually crept up. Mainly, the change of roles or gender roles with, more women, leaving those domestic household type jobs and moving more into the, the more corporate positions and things like that. So that's at the top when they talk about reasons for increased divorce, is just that change in tradition and stuff like that. But of course, there are some other reasons. But, more interesting than that, though, is just, the question of how divorce rates may differ based off of, age, race, gender, and things like that. And so focusing on, say like by race, and it was surprising because, of course, we're kind of, familiar with the community that we come from, the African American community, and just looking at the numbers, and we have a lot of, cohorts that we know that have dealt with divorce and things like that. But ironically enough, we're at the bottom when compared to, whites and Hispanics. We're at 33%. Whites are at 40% and Hispanics are at 39% in terms of divorce rate. So I guess that may be good news, however you want to look at that. But to even go further than that, another interesting stat was that, they found that the average lifespan of a marriage in today's time is about 9 years. 9 years that a marriage usually lasts. And that's different, because looking at maybe our grandparents and people that have come before us, they had those long lasting marriages, 30, 40, 50 years. And so in relation to that, 9 years is not a long time. So that was really surprising to me. Just in terms of just sheer numbers and looking at rates and trends and averages and stuff like that. So, divorce is a thing that we're dealing with, not only in the African American community, but in all communities. And marriages are not lasting long. So we got some questions to, I guess, present to the people, and maybe through this discussion, we'll have a better grasp on why that is. Why marriages are not lasting long, and if there's anything, in our message that we can deliver to kind of get us back to having those marriages that last until death do us part.
And really, and the reason I want to hit this from a different angle, right? Because I think we can actually do a whole series on the black family and just families in general. But for this particular topic, I got to kind of pondering and just reflecting on how a lot of my cohorts and peers have gotten married, and a number of them have gotten divorced. So, I just started thinking really outside of the box around this whole divorce rate. And one of the questions that I actually posed, or I actually thought about, was really centered around one day just kind of listening to, and this is going to be surprising, just listen to Lil Wayne's How to Love song. And even though the lyrics of it may not be so prophetic, the title kind of poses a question that I really thought would be a good topic for the podcast, right? So, how to love. Because I think there's an assumption that people know how to love and how to care. And I think in a lot of instances that may be the wrong assumption. So I guess for today's topic or for today's podcast, that's kind of discuss the question that's around how to love. But in doing so, there were two different angles I kind of wanted to take. The first one being around the 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Kind of take that one and kind of decipher and break that down. And then the second one kind of being around just examples. So just males, since you said earlier, that's kind of focused on the male perspective. Have males had examples throughout their upbringing that they could use as an example to know how to love someone, their partner, or what have you? You see where I'm trying to go with this?
Yeah, and when you talk about love, man, love is a tricky thing in itself, because there's so many, as we are kind of getting at now, there's so many different approaches to love. And then you factor in just all of the other things, the feelings and the attraction and the chemistry and all those type of things, all those different elements that play a part in, being in love or falling in love and maintaining love. It's so much that it can be very complicating and very confusing at times. So these approaches and breaking it down and looking at it, make, clear that mud up a little bit, and so that we'll have a better feel on, how we should receive love. And then of course, how we should, give love and maintain it. So this will be a good one.
It's a real good one because, again, like I said, I think that there's an assumption that that people know how to love. So we get into these relationships with our partners, significant others, and I think we assume that everyone understand that we understand each other and that we know how to love that person. And I think that in a lot of instances, for various reasons, things doesn't work out. So let's kind of touch on, I guess the first one I rose was the 5 love languages, and I brought this one up for several reasons, and I kind of want to discuss this one and break this particular topic down before we even go into the second topic. But have you had a chance to read 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, or take the assessment that goes along with that particular author's book?
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many times I've been asked, have I read that book? And I've been actually dodging that book for a long time for whatever reason. But I have had an opportunity to kind of skim through it and read it on its surface level, look at the chapters and kind of see what it's talking about. Haven't taken the assessment, but what I've gathered from my exposure to the book, though, is that it's a good book in terms of giving you, bare bones, kind of giving you maybe a blueprint, maybe too strong of a word, but it kind of gives you an idea of love and the way that we individually are seeking love or respond to love or how we consider what love is. So I think it's a book. I also think that you have to be careful, though, as well as this book, with all of those other books that are, relationship books like Thinking Like a Man and all those type of things. You just have to be careful and not, use that as a be all end all, because, as people, we're different, we're unique. So you'll be able to take bits and pieces from the book and use it. But don't just use that as your sole approach to, to getting to know someone and, connecting with them. So, but it's a good book though. It's a good book.
So let's call out the 5. So the 5 are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. So me personally, I did take the assessment, and it was more so, just out of the note, just wanting to, doing some self-evaluation and wanting to really understand how I perceive love. So I did take the assessment, and similar to you, I've read the book more along the lines of skimming than a heavy reading, but I did read, but I did take the assessment. But the thing I kind of wanted to touch on as it relates to how to love is it's really centered around these 5 love languages, right? And just from taking the assessment, and for me, my highest score was more around acts of service. I kind of learned that for me, acts of service, someone may be doing something kind for me, I kind of receive that as love, right? But on top of that, what I learned was kind of around this whole idea of that's how I give love too. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? So if I perceive love as acts of service, which means that's how I give love, and on the flip side, if that's how I also receive love, then if I'm dating someone of the opposite sex, or if I'm dating someone and they give me a gift, that may be their love language. You see what I'm saying? So right. For them, if their love language is gifts and they're giving me gifts, but I'm not really centered, if gifts is my lowest score, then there's going to be a disconnection off the top.
Yeah. If you use that solely, and that's right too, man, because people will tell you, just even my friends will tell you, that when they start talking about gifts, the first thing that I'll say is, don't buy me anything, because if I had to think about me not taking the assessment, but if I had to pick one of the ones, I would be more of an acts of service type of person, that's more based off of just kind of actions and what you do versus, gifts per se. And so, yeah, I see that, that it would be different because you don't come from that language. It would be tough for you to, at your surface, appreciate, when somebody says or expresses their love to you because it's unfamiliar to you. It's not where you come from.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons I kind of wanted to discuss this particular topic today, is because I think that in a lot of relationships, we get into a lot of relationships, and number one, we may not even understand what our own love language is. Better yet, be able to decipher and understand the love language of our partner. So if I don't even understand what my particular love language is, in a lot of ways, or how am I going to get this person to communicate to me in my love language, and vice versa? If this person, they may understand their love language, but it may not even have been communicated to me. So I think there's a really big breakdown and misunderstanding in this whole idea surrounding love languages and being able to communicate in your love language, as well as being able to show love to your significant other in their love language. Because even though I may know my love language is acts of service, if my significant other's love language is another one of the five, but I'm continuously saying, hey, I'm trying to do these things to show you that I care about you, and that person's not receiving it on their end, then there's going to be a break in communication.
One of the things that that thing highlighted in the book, it was just talking about, one of the difficulties in love or being in love or being in relationships is stepping outside of yourself, stepping outside of what you want and how you want things to play out, right? And so the reason why it is important to be able to do that is because when you remove yourself from the equation and you focus on, getting to know the other person and what the other person is about and what, makes the other person go, then you're in a better situation. You're more open to it when you get yourself out of the equation. When you take your personal wants and dreams and needs out of it, you can see the other person more clearly. And even with that, when they come a time to where they may be speaking a different language, because you are trying to be more in tune to them and what they're bringing to the table, you'll be more flexible. You'll be able to adjust to those things versus trying to hold on to, your way of doing it and ended up in conflict to what they're trying to tell you, or in conflict to what they want you to give to them. You got to get out of your own way.
This is true. This is true. But that's why, I like I said earlier, I think there's an assumption that we know how to love, and I think there's an assumption that we make, or that individuals make when they get into a relationship with someone, is that this person has gone through the exact same experiences that you've gone through. As a result, because again, you think that you're equally yoked, because a lot of times the person you date, or you would want to date someone that's equally yoked with you, so you may assume that your life experiences are similar to that person's life experiences, and as a result, divorce rates and marriages, we get married and we end up having these divorce rates because we don't know how to express ourselves and show that individual how we love them. That's the reason why I thought that Lil Wayne song, even though I'm more so referring to the title of the song, that's pretty deep when you think about it. I think we've gotten so smart that it's actually becoming, in some ways, a disadvantage. To where we can't even go to the basics because, something as simple as how to love, and when you can't even interpret someone else's love language, or at the same time, you don't even know your own to kind of express to that individual, say, hey, you can continuously buy me gifts, but that means nothing to me. But if you, decide to come and I'm about to pack up and move, and you help me pack and move, that may mean the world to me. You see what I'm saying?
When we opened this up, I was telling you about, about how I feel about, the gifts and getting gifts and telling people, don't buy me anything. But you gotta, and understanding that, certain people, it's just in them to give gifts. So if I'm going to be, whether it be in a romantic relationship or if I'm going to just be in a communal relationship, I've got to be open to, I like, to see actions and service. That means more to me than anything else. But I've got to know that it means a lot to that other person to be able to give me a gift. And so I have to step outside of myself and say, okay, I'm going to be appreciative of this gift. I'm going to be very thankful or grateful for this gift that this person is giving me because it comes from a place in their heart. And that's the way that they express it. I can't just be tone deaf to what they're saying to me and then on the other end be disrespectful to them in their attempt to extend, a sign of appreciation. And that's the hardest part in relationships. And I think that's a part of when we say work in a relationship, that's a part of that work. It's not always the physical work. It's working within yourself. It's working within your own mind and your own spirit to meet the other person in the middle so that you can have a fruitful relationship and a fruitful interaction versus, the relationship being dominated by how you want it to be, the things that you want to get out of it. That's the hardest part. And I think that, which ultimately equates to being selfish, is probably the root to what we see in a lot of relationships breaking up. I can personally speak from my own thing to where I haven't been married, but I have been in relationships that when I look back on it, the root cause was some degree of selfishness on one partner's side or the other.
Yeah, like you were saying earlier, when you use the gifts as an example, that may be that person's love language. So you have to be, even though that may be something that doesn't connect with you, if that's the way that person expresses their self, then you have to understand that and be and appreciate that from that individual. So I think that, like you were saying earlier, there is a kind of a removing self from, or ego from the equation, and really just trying to bear down into and communicating with that person and just trying to really understand, hey, this is what connects with me. This is how I express myself, and vice versa. This is how this person expresses themselves, and being able to appreciate both how they perceive love as well as how you give love.
Right.
So I that was one area I kind of wanted to talk about, and I guess the second one, which is going to be a little bit more deeper, is more really around this whole idea of the assumption that we all come from households where love was expressed. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, and if we really go back, and you probably can give a better history lesson than I can, just on the Black experience from slavery until present day. From slavery until the present day, and I think the assumption is, in a lot of instances, that we come from families that expressed love or that showed affection in the family. But the question that I kind of pose today, and really centered around how the love is, if you really think about it, how with the significant other person that you're dating, I think it's important to understand that person's history and that background. And what I mean by that is even going back 2 generations. So was their grandfather and grandmother together, married? So that'll be 1 generation. And moving to their current immediate family, are their parents still together, or was their dad or was their mom a single parent? And then just saying, okay, understanding that they may be 2 generations removed from an example of how relationships should go. You see what I'm saying? So if you, in a lot of instances, if you compare, maybe a Caucasian family where they may have 2 generations where their grandparents were married for 50 years and then their current family may be married for 30 years or so, that example is going to be more. It's going to be an example that they can go off of as to how to treat someone of the opposite of their partner, what have you. Whereas if you come from a family structure that's dysfunctional, then to make the assumption that this person knows how to love, I think is a inaccurate statement. What are your thoughts on, as far as, I guess, more so around, and just knowing the Black experience and families being, pretty much broken apart from slavery until present day? What are your thoughts on first and second generation families where it may be single parents or it may have been a divorce? So you as an individual, as a Black male or what have you, may not have had the experience of having an example to know how to treat someone, your partner, or whatever.
Well, one thing is for sure is that we're products of our environment, and then our environment shows itself in a lot of the things that we do. And relationships is one of those things to where we only can operate effectively from what we've been exposed to or what we've experienced. So I think there is some truth to what you're talking about, is that, if you have an example of loving relationships and things like that, then that increases the likelihood that you'll be able to, know love when you see it, and be able to do those things that, maintain healthy relationships and all those kind of things. So that is true. I guess from a historical standpoint, we often view like the olden days as a time when things were in a better state, that things were more together back in the day. Say like when my grandparents, had been in previous marriages before they came into the, being my grandparents, so to say. So what that tells me is that even though we, in our minds, because we're here now, in our minds, we consider the olden days to have been a more perfect time. But we see that a lot of the things that we're dealing with now, adultery, having outside relationships, people getting separated or divorced, these things existed then. Right. So it really wasn't a perfect situation. But I do think that at that period of time, people were a little bit more tied to responsibility and respect, not only within their household, but within the community. So what would happen would be that, you might have some outside situation going on, but you never wanted anybody else to know about it. So how do you keep somebody else from knowing about it? You paint the picture. You paint the picture that everything was okay. And that's in some relationships. And then others were true, down hard, ride or die relationships. Okay. So I think what has happened is that, going to what you were saying, is that we've become, so much more knowledgeable about ourselves. We have so much more access to different things. It's easier to be, in an extra relationship. It's easier to get out of a relationship and be in another relationship before the sun comes up. So instead of me having to work on my present situation and work through all of the bad times and all of the obstacles that come up, at the drop of a hat, I can be like, hey, I don't think we need to do this anymore, and move on, without any thought of, maintaining a responsibility, maintaining the home front. It's just more so going back. It's more so about what I want to do at this period of time and forget what anybody else is talking about. And in these relationships, you've got to be willing to, work through it, which highlights another point of, how much of a choice that love is. When you decide to marry somebody with what we're talking about, it's a choice, And like everything else that we make a decision on, is like you have gotten to the point to where you say, hey, I'm deciding to get married because this is the best. I need this in my life. This is the best thing for me right now. And this is what I want to do. Marriage shouldn't be something that you get forced into, coerced into doing, or tricked into doing. Right? So that too might be a different, but yes. You have to have some exposure. You have to have some examples, I guess, that you can look at, that you can base your moves off of, to being able to maneuver in a loving relationship and in relationships in general.
And even more so centered around this second idea of having examples. I kind of think about, so say, for example, you never had an example, or you're not sure of how to love someone, right? When you start getting these emotions and things start changing, people start, you don't know how to respond, and you might get a little scared to change. And so because of that, you may not respond in a way that is natural when it comes to expressing yourself around love. So if you never had that example, or if you don't know how to, then I think that in a lot of ways you tend to respond when change comes. You tend to kind of you kind of don't respond in a way that someone that's had an example typically would.
You get into that fight and flight.
Yeah, you
get the hell out of here.
Get the hell out.
I don't like this. Let me get the hell out of this.
Because that's that uncomfortable, and that's that unknown. And when you start getting into that unfamiliar territory, then as an animal, as a human being, you go into survival and protection mode.
Exactly. That's true.
You do. So the point that I think that a lot of times, and I think that we really need to communicate with the person that we're dating, or the person that you so-called in love with, to really on the front end get to understand each other and really understand how I receive love or how I give love, and also communicate on the front end as around, did this person even have an example growing up? And if they've never had an example, or they're unsure, then that may be one of the areas where you gotta tread water lightly, and you gotta walk them through this whole entire process. Because to make the assumption when you first get into a relationship that this person is gonna know how to treat me, or they've experienced love before, so they're gonna know how to respond. I think in today's era, when you look back at the divorce rate, if you look back at the current family structure, I think it's a little bit more deeper than what we would tend to think.
Yeah, it's a real deal. It's the real deal. It's the real deal.
Look at how many family structures. Look at the family structure today. Most children and most people nowadays are being raised by single parents. You have very few families where you have both parents in the household. So that alone is going to change the structure of how individuals think and react.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So imagine you have kids, and if the number continues to increase with single families, single parents raising families, and just imagine what your kids are going to experience compared to just where we're at today. This whole idea that, just today you got, what was the percentage? 33% or even higher. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, you can Google this stuff, anybody that's interested. But even just from me Googling, it was funny because they said that they gave a statistic that said that was divorce. But that's not to even say how many of them are separated, because people may not have gone and filed for divorce, but still be separated because they don't have the finances to divorce.
Right.
So that number could even be higher.
Higher than, and it's estimated that about 1 million divorces per year. 1 million divorces per year since 2000. So that's crazy.
Exactly. So if that number is that high,
that's crazy.
And you got individuals walking around here that grew up in these single parent households, and even though they may be coming from a loving background, but if you've never seen a mother and a father or whomever express love, then that's going to be kind of, for that individual, for that child or whomever that was in that household, that's going to be a learning experience. And that's going to be a learning curve for that individual to be able to express and know how to love someone.
And don't forget about, the other emotions like the resentment and the stuff that a child may have for the parent that's not there, for the parent that may have left. And I didn't even so you got a young woman whose dad may have left or done something like that. Like, she might have some ill feelings. It might be difficult for her to operate in a relationship because of the feelings and the fears that she may have because of what her dad did. And so that may put her at a disadvantage. And the same thing for a male child, put him at a disadvantage as well. You know, in terms of just being in relationships and being able to interact with people and the the expectations that child may have when they get older and start wanting to be in a relationship. What type of expectations do they have from the opposite sex?
This is true.
That type of thing. Interesting enough, though, we kind of talking about it, relationships from the ultimate standpoint, marriage and divorce. But of course, you can't forget that, there are phases to get you to that point, and from our own personal experience, sometimes we just kind of skate through the important parts of establishing relationships. We speed through that acquaintance phase to where you meet the person and you just kind of start getting to know who they are just from a platonic friendship level. Who are you? What are the things that you like? What are the things that you not like? Just getting to know them as a person. But we get caught up in that initial attraction, boy, and that chemistry. And if you act in that that little honeymoon phase, where everything is good, and get too far off in that shit, you'll be in a relationship before you're actually ready for it, and you don't have that foundation to really grow on.
Right. So you go from A to C.
A to C, and B, boy, you need B. you need B. Because once you get into like the official relationships, you get, into engagement and marriage, that B deficiency is going to show up. And then now it's a matter of how do you respond? How do you work backwards to fill that B deficiency? Or do you get to the point to say, this is not going to work. Let's just call it quits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of what I wanted to touch on today, really to summarize and also give you an opportunity to summarize. It's more so around this idea of assuming that the individuals you're in a relationship with knows how to love and express love to you. And I think if we really pondered the whole question and take a step back into this whole idea of love and knowing how and ask the question how to love, I think that a lot of relationships and marriages and those things will be saved in our community. And if people didn't rush to judgment and get married hoping and thinking that you could change someone versus really understanding how they express love, and then appreciating and valuing how they express love, but at the same time, that individual being able to appreciate and receive the way you show love based off the love languages. And lastly, understanding somebody's background and really from their background, understanding that, hey, they may not have had an example. So if I'm dealing with someone that may not have had an example, versus someone that's had an example, I may have to walk lightly and tread water and walk them through the process. Because if there's someone that you truly want to be with, and there's someone that truly wants to be with you, then they'll acknowledge that, say, hey, I don't have the answer, Sway. I ain't got the answer. So we're going to have to walk this thing together. But if you've experienced this and you're at 100 and they've never experienced, they're at 0, and you trying to go at 100, they not ready. And they going to do like you say. What you say? Fight or flight.
Get the hell out of there.
That's the unknown. So that's all I got to say on that particular topic.
Yeah, and I think this could be complex, and we don't want our people, the listeners, to get it misconstrued. We don't think that this is a easy thing, and we're both kind of in the situation of identifying and finding love and maintaining it. But I think a simple approach is to, like you said in the opening, is really get to know who you are. Really spend some time with yourself and find what you like. what makes you, if you want to go into the book, find out what your language is. And once you do that, then it's easier for you to communicate that to someone else. Right. And of course, you know, we all want to be treated a certain kind of way. And so, you know, in respecting ourselves, we've got to respect other people, respect where they come from, like you talked about, respect their experiences and respect what they're bringing to the table. And then lastly is just being open and willing to grow. You don't have all the answers. You're not, you know, you may not, you're not an expert on that other person. So let them live, give them some space to live and grow together. And you take bits and pieces from them and they take bits and pieces from you. And it keeps everything in balance versus coming into a relationship with a checklist and all of your expectations. And the moment that something, you know, goes counter to what you have on that list, then you're ready to break tail and run. If it's a quality person, if it's a person that makes you better, you know, if they bring something to your life and you're bringing something to their life, you know, grow together. Don't be so quick to quit and give up. But
what's the but? What's the
if you've gone through all this and it's a toxic situation, don't hold on to a toxic situation. God don't want that for you, and neither do I. And this message is approved by BG the 27 Kid.
Disapproved?
I approve this message. No toxic relationships, please.
Oh, I agree 100% on that. So, you know, take the test. Find out who you are, what your love language is. Women, female listeners, have your guy friends listen at this podcast. You know, sit them down, listen to the podcast, have them go through the podcast, you know, and then y'all have the discussion, you know, find out, you know, take the test together, the love language test, so y'all can understand one another, and then find out their history and their background and where they come from, and find out if, you know, if they had an example, if not, and how y'all gonna work through this thing. So that's all I got. You want to let the people know how they can find us?
Indeed. Blog site, freelunchpodcast.blogspot.com. You can also catch us on Twitter, FreeLunchPodC, on the Instagram, FreeLunch Podcast. Check us out sometime. If you like the podcast, let us know you like it. If you don't like it, let us know you don't like it. But either way, check us out. We appreciate having your ears, appreciate you spending time with us, and we love doing this. And we'll see you guys the next time. Tight.
Teach me how to love. Show me the way to surrender my heart. Girl, I'm so lost. Teach me how to love. How I can get my emotions involved. Teach me. Show me how to love.
Yeah. Teach me how to love.
And we out of here.
We out of here. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
I'm speaking it awkwardly. Charles Barkley, barking, they ain't biting. I'm getting that green broccoli. Properly giving props to the problem, fulfill prophecy. It gotta be better than that. It gotta be obsolete. Obviously, niggas rolling the dice, and this ain't Monopoly. My purpose was to do it on purpose. Fucking apology. Go.